Okay, I
We're
believe
ready?
we're ready. Take it away, Peter.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rockingham Planning MPO meeting.
What?
Rockingham Planning, Southern New Hampshire. I'm regressing. I was chairman of Rockingham Planning for a number. I'm regressing. I think I should leave now.
No, you're good.
Welcome to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission Metropolitan Organization meeting. What we will do is I will call for a motion to accept the minutes of June 28th. And then we have Sylvia do a roll call, which covers both the person's presence and their whether or not they support or are opposed to the minutes. So could I have a motion to accept the minutes of June 28th?
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any corrections or omissions? Okay, not seeing it from virtual, any corrections or omissions on the minutes? Okay, Sylvia, do you want to take it away?
Let's take it away. I don't believe we have anyone from Auburn today, but starting with Bedford in the room here, we have Charlie Fairman,
I'm here.
Bill Jean.
President, yes.
From Candia, we have Rudy Cartier.
And abstain.
Thanks, Rudy. No one from Chester today, no one from Deerfield today. From Derry, though, we have a full house. Jeff Moulton,
Here and yes.
John O'Connor.
Present, abstain.
Thanks, John. Richard Tripp.
Present and yes.
Thank you. From Francistown, we have a good virtual presence. We have Jennifer Badney.
Present and abstain.
We have Gary Schnackenberg.
Present, aye.
And did I say that okay, Gary, your last name?
Perfect, perfectly.
Okay, good.
Sylvia, we also have present Craig Durrett. He has no mic or video. He's with the town of Derry.
Yes, he's, I believe, a guest.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I saw that in the chat.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Craig, for being a guest today. We have 2 guests. That's unusual. 3, we also have a Sean. Anyway, let's continue. From Goffstown in the house, we have David Pierce.
Here, vote yes.
And online, we have Jacob LaFontaine.
Present and yes.
Thanks, Jacob. From Hooksett, virtually, we have Rob Curry.
Present and yes.
Thanks, Rob. From Londonderry online, we have Arthur Rudd.
I am present and yes on the minutes.
And we have Lynn Wiles.
Yes, good morning. I am present and yes on the minutes.
Thanks, Lynn, for being here. This is Sean O'Donnell, planner from Southwest Regional Planning. Okay, thank you, Sean. I'm just seeing that in the chat. Manchester, we have Peter Capano
Present and yes.
and Raymond Clement
Here and yes.
and Marcus Ponce de Leon.
Present, yes.
Thank you. No one from New Boston today. No one from where today? From Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin
President, yes.
and we have Edgar Lapointe.
Yes, present and yes.
Thank you. Also from DOT, we have William Rose.
Good morning. Present and yes.
Oh, he's the invisible man today, which looks weird. And let's see, we have from MTA, we have Brian Reynolds Smith.
I am present. I don't see in the meeting minutes that Mike was here, so I will abstain.
Okay, and we also have Tracy, but we only need one person but we love that there are 2 of you, just let that be known. We also have with us a host of guests here, and we're going to be hearing from one of those guests soon from DES.
Okay. Is there any?
We have one more person. That is Don Waldron from Manchester, just walked in the house. Did I miss anyone by chance?
We also have Alfred Eisenberg from Francistown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Alfred, did you want to weigh in on the meeting minutes?
Sure. Here and yes.
Thank you. And Don, would you like to weigh in on the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now we're all, oh, she's pointing.
Mark Suda just joined.
Oh, and we have Mark Sunin from New Boston. Mark, we just went through introductions and meeting minutes. Would you like to weigh in on the meeting minutes?
Sure. Present and yes.
Okay. Oh, and there's Brian Battaglia. This is going to be one of those days. All right, Brian, are you there? We just did the round, going around the room. Would you like to weigh in on the meeting minutes?
Yes, and present.
Thank you. All right.
Sylvia, I hope you have enough ingredients for the mimosas and the Bloody Marys, the way these people are chiming in.
I do. I have a big supply in the back
Okay,
office.
good.
Yes.
Do we have any old business to come before this meeting, before you head to new business?
No old business.
Great. Okay, on the new business, we have, I guess, presentation, clean diesel grant program. Ricky DiCillo, grants coordinator. Ricky, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let me know if this, oh, I cannot do so.
Oh, let me do that right now and make you a co-host. Thank you. And then I will mute us. Right after we know that you can share your screen, of course.
All right. That. All right, everyone can see my presentation?
Yep.
All right, and yes, please feel free to interrupt me if you have a question, but I'll also have some time at the end for questions. My name is Ricky DiCillo. I'm the grants coordinator at DES. I'm here to talk about the Clean Diesel program. This is an annual program that you may have heard of before, but I wanted to highlight a couple of exciting things for this year. I'll send this slide deck out so that people can take a look at these links, but this link here will bring you to the web page, which will have the request for proposals, the program guide, and all the supporting documents. Let's see. So just some program basics. This is a grant program which provides matching reimbursements. It is an anticipated funding pool of $1.4 million. And the projects that we're looking for are those that will reduce diesel emissions. This can include, and this is the big one, replacing a diesel unit, like a diesel vehicle or a diesel engine or farm equipment or whatever it is, as well as upgrading some of those so they reduce their emissions, or installing idle reduction technology, for instance, electrifying a truck stop. Like I said, this counts for on-road highway vehicles, non-road things, locomotives, marine vessels, engines without touching the entire vehicle, et cetera. And this is open to most fleets and owners, public and private. We can get into the details as to what that means, but almost anyone who owns a fleet of diesel or even one diesel may be eligible. And this program's open now. We opened it up the 15th. So it's pretty newly opened. The first round of proposals is due the 9th of September at the end of the day, 4 p.m. And if after we go through those proposals, if there are still funds left over that haven't been allocated, we'll consider other proposals that are due as late as the 1st of November and the 1st of January. So let's talk about the background of this. EPA provides annual funding pretty much so far through the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. The New Hampshire Volkswagen Beneficiary Trust then matches those DERA funds, which then unlocks bonus federal DERA funds. And we added that all together with some of the funds that were left over from last year's DERA solicitation, which gets us to that $1.4 million. The purpose of this is to improve New Hampshire's air quality for human health and for the environment by reducing diesel emissions of NOx, particulate matter, and CO2. Exposure to diesel emissions can contribute to health problems such as asthma, lung cancer, and other cardiac and respiratory diseases, and can cause premature death. There are two major categories of projects. There are those that affect a vehicle, the equipment, or an engine, and there are those that are sort of off-board installations. For those off-board installations, as on the right, you can see an electric truck stop, or is a similar plug for a marine vessel, and they actually can also refer locomotives. And the idea is When a truck, for instance, is hoteling because the trucker needs to take his break, his or her break, and it's overnight, and they're sitting at the truck stop, they usually keep their truck on so they can, use the heat, air conditioning, charge their phone, whatever it is. But you can actually now plug them into these pedestals if you can install them, and that way they can turn the truck off, but keep their power going through the cab. Now, a lot of our projects are vehicle engine equipment upgrades, especially replacing vehicles. Replacing an old diesel can be replaced with a new diesel, which will reduce its diesel emissions. Replacing diesels of any age, even a newer diesel, with a low NOx propane, natural gas, or electric version. And replacing engines in marine vessels or rebuilding a locomotive can also help reduce those diesel emissions. So a couple of ideas of what these projects actually look like. You could, some example projects are, and these are from actual projects that we've either received proposals for or that we've actually funded in the past. Replacing school buses with electric school buses, replacing an old diesel plow truck with a new diesel plow truck. That's a really big one up here in New Hampshire, as I'm sure all of us can attest to. Anything that has to drive through the snow is going to take a beating. Replacing an old diesel wheeled loader with a new diesel wheeled loader. Diesel refuse trucks replaced with refuse trucks that run on compressed natural gas. And even replacing like an old diesel drayage truck with a new diesel drayage truck. We actually had a few different proposals for replacing diesel engines in fishing boats, and even to rebuild a locomotive engine so that its configuration was going to reduce the emissions. We also are looking for projects that may install electric parking spaces at truck stops. Like I said, it can help truckers turn off their vehicles overnight. And as another example of something we've kind of run into before, replacing a diesel-powered freight crane with a crane that plugs directly into the grid, or another piece of equipment that doesn't run on the diesel, but instead just plugs directly into the electricity. So those are kind of the things that we can do. Here are just a few restrictions on how that works. If you were talking about an on-road diesel vehicle, like a truck or a bus or something, it has to be class 5 to 8. It's not going to, this program can't affect, say, like a small diesel pickup truck for more or less personal light duty use. But anything larger than class 5 and higher will be fine. If you're looking to swap a diesel for a diesel, the older engine must be 2009 or older. This does not apply if you're looking to swap a diesel for something that's not diesel, like electric, low NOx propane, or low NOx natural gas. The unit that you're replacing has to be in regular usage, or not even replacing or upgrading anything, has to be in regular usage. There's like a specific hour per year or mile per year for each different kind that we can get into the charts once we get down the line. And if a diesel unit is replaced, it must be scrapped after you get the new one. This is a federal requirement. The old thing has to be taken permanently disabled so it can't be used any longer. But you can, salvage the metal or whatever to get the funds from that. The project type determines how much the program can fund. Well, I'll show you some details of that. It's reimbursement, so this can't be for things that have already occurred. Funds can only be reimbursed after the project is done, and the projects have to be completed by no later than the end of September of next year, and cannot start until after GNC approval. So it's sort of a challenging timeline, but we anticipate we may be able to find extensions. We can't guarantee them, but we are hoping that these are projects that are ready to go and just need the green light to place those vehicles. So here's a sample, non-exhaustive, just some of the project categories and kind of sort of what the funding percentage would be for them. Again, there are others that aren't on here. These are just some of the more popular ones. You have a drayage truck you're looking to replace, it can potentially be up to 50% of the funds of the new drayage truck. Replacing an old diesel with a newer diesel, the program can fund 25% of that cost. Replacing a diesel with something that's not diesel, like NOx propane, low NOx propane or CNG, 35%. And if it's for electric, the grant can fund up to 45%, including the price of a charger. if you're looking to replace like just the engine, say like out of a fishing boat, or if you had a bus that the chassis is fine, but the engine needs to be replaced, that could be 40%, which is higher than 25% of doing the whole thing. And for like your parking spaces, for the electric truck stops, for instance, that'd be 30%. This is just a quick glance at the scoring criteria we're going to use. Like I said, this is a competitive selection. This is not a lottery. This is not a guarantee. Submitting the thing, if it's eligible, will be scored. And these are the criteria we are going to look at. As you can see, criteria on A, cost effectiveness of emission reductions, is 45 points. So quite a lot of points to look at how much the project costs versus how much it will actually reduce emissions. You can also see that there are bonus points for if the applicant is a government entity, if the applicant is replacing with any alternative fuel, and there are also points awarded for benefiting an environmental justice community or population. So here's our timeline. Like I said, it opened July 15th. On August 9th, we're going to have a webinar where I'm going to go through the program again, kind of walk us through this a similar presentation, but then we'll also have time for a live Q&A. So if you walk away today interested and you still want to have more time to think about this and talk to me about this directly and maybe have some questions answered, or even just listen to me answer other questions, there's a registration link in this slideshow that I'll send out. And the application period for round 1 closes on September 9th. Now, everything we get from September 10th to November 1st would be part of round 2, which we would consider if we still have funds left over from round 1. And the same goes for round 3, which is from November 1st to January 1st. Like I said, projects have to wait for approval before they can begin. So G&C needs to approve it. We need to send the notice to proceed, and then the project can begin. And they need to be finished by next September. So there's a lot of things that are through at you. Here's what I'm going to say. We can help. Granite State Clean Cities Coalition is a program that is housed at DES. My colleague Jessica Wilcox came to speak with SNHPC's TTEC last week, I believe. And so Jessica can help with project development, fleet analysis, and can provide resources for alternative fuel vehicles. So if you're thinking it'd be great to switch this for an electric or a gas or a propane version, but you don't know if that even exists or what kind of options there are, she can help kind of figure out how to find those resources, which information you might need, and help you kind of get the information you need to make those decisions. And Jessica also hosts numerous workshops and webinars and meetings and even live demos. So if you ever wanted to just get behind the wheel of an electric vehicle and see how that feels, she's the person to talk to about when those kind of demos might be coming around. On the other side of things, both her and I are happy to help with technical support. If the proposal materials are confusing, if you're having trouble downloading them, things like that, let me know. I'm happy to help. I can also help to do some preliminary eligibility determination. I can't officially tell you if your project is eligible until you submit it, but if you're looking to just test the water with an idea, call me, talk to me, email me. I can even tell you some about the past projects that we've done and sort of how those worked out. We can't tell you whether or not your project will be funded or how well it will do in the scoring or anything like that. But if you give us enough time, we can give you some information that might help you. So my contact information, Jessica's contact information, link to all of the material, link to the webinar. Happy to have with any questions anyone might have, but that's the end of my slideshow. So if you guys want to unmute or ask me questions, here I am.
Any questions for Ricky in-house? Go ahead.
I've got a couple. The charging stations. You mentioned these charging stations at truck stops. Who's responsible for those?
Yeah, so let me just, one point of clarification. They're not charging stations. They're more like plug-in power. So it wouldn't charge a truck up. It would just let you use the truck's electronics without using like the gas, the diesel to fuel the battery sort of thing like you normally would. The person who applies could be the owner of the truck stop. It could be the owner of the pedestals, however they want to coordinate that, as long as it gets done and there's some sort of agreement between the person who owns the place and things going in the ground. That's fine by me.
Yes, go
Will
ahead.
will this project pay for privately owned charging stations?
Do you mean like for an electric car?
No, for like a truck.
So do you mean like for an electric truck or just for a diesel truck to just plug in overnight?
No, an electric truck.
This program could fund an electric truck and its charger for instance, a business or municipality or an agency. Not so much for just like an individual's private vehicle. And again, the vehicle would need to be replacing an older vehicle, replacing a diesel vehicle that already exists of a certain category.
One more.
More on that, I have to let other people speak.
All right. What does drayage mean?
I don't have the exact definition in front of me, but a drayage truck is essentially a truck which helps to facilitate the port travel, especially between, the freight travel from ports and to warehouses. So the trucks that get the port material from the boats, the shipping yards and stuff, and bring that over to like disperse that into a warehouse is a drayage truck. And so those trucks typically are very heavy. They run a lot, they idle a lot because they kind of sit at the port getting loaded up, which is why they have a special category.
I think Ricky also.
Ricky, question. Are any of your applicants expressing concern over when you issue the notice to proceed, once the governor and council approves it, and the deadline for completion? Perhaps that window of time is too short, considering manufacturers having supply problems. They're not able to get all of the new equipment in stock.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. So let me address a couple of things there. The September 30th deadline is a federal deadline. If we get a project approved, we give the notice to proceed, and that applicant turns around and says, there's no way I can get this done. It turns out there is in fact a huge supply chain issue. The process, so I'll just be transparent here, the process would be me asking EPA for an extension so we can get a federal extension on the grant, and then asking governor and council to sign off on that extension. This is something that we've done in the past for previous grants. I can't guarantee that this would happen for every following grant, but I can say that this has happened quite a few times in the past. Governor and council records are all public, so I can just tell you that we've done this a few times this year even. I think if we were to ask EPA for an extension on this grant because of supply chain issues, we would not be the only state doing that. I can't, again, speak for other states, but if I had to guess. So while that deadline is the official deadline, I foresee that there is, let me rephrase that, not I foresee, I see the precedent for extension in previous years.
I'm sorry. Any additional questions in-house? Any questions?
I got one.
Oh, go ahead.
This may be a different pot of money, but DES has put their, backing for a settlement with the PUC for docket 21078 for charging stations. Do you know if that's in their, what they're offering is some Volkswagen settlement money?
I'm actually not sure. That's not my exact responsibilities, so I haven't been following that. If you'd like to email me, I can forward your question to somebody who may be able to get you an answer, though.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
I have a question about the decision-making process on the proposals themselves. So obviously, someone who has a larger fleet or more sites to upgrade or enhance are going to have more of an environmental impact than the smaller guys. How is that weighed in the decision-making process?
Excellent question. So while a larger fleet would, if say replacing, let's say, just say for sake of argument, 5 buses versus 1 bus, right? 5 buses is a larger environmental impact. However, it is also more expensive. So the criterion A is the cost effectiveness of those reductions. So while it may be more a larger project, if it costs more, that would potentially balance it out. So a smaller fleet should be graded more or less on the same curve, if you know what I mean.
Sure, but what about the individuals that are also invited to submit proposals?
We have this criterion E for clarity of proposal potential for success. We recognize that a larger corporation or municipality or nonprofit, which has spent more time applying for grants in the past, has a little bit more experience writing these grants, which is why I encourage everyone to contact us if there's any questions or if they're feeling that way about it. I'm not going to be one of the people scoring these, so I can't speak to how the scoring committee will feel about a particular thing in an application, but the smaller projects should have just as fair a shake as the larger projects, because again, a small project could be very inexpensive, and it could be a very inexpensive way to see some emission reductions. Does that help, or am I missing your question?
No, that was the answer. Yes, so it's kind of like the small projects are just filling the gaps, basically.
Okay, unless there's any other questions from in-house, I'd like to welcome those who are virtually calling in for questions.
I have one.
Please go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Ricky. I'm wondering if your presentation here is being made to other planning commissions as well. And the reason I ask that question is that, for example, our town is part of a multi-town school district, but the school district itself is located within a different planning commission region, right? And so the school buses seem to be a really likely target area for this, for several of the criteria that you have here. And so I'm wondering if it's incumbent on me to pass the information along, or if for someone in that town would be hearing the same presentation at a different regional planning commission.
Yes, thank you. So I am planning to present at many of the RPCs throughout the state in this month and next. There are a few which have very full agendas, and I was unfortunately unable to get onto their schedule, but I will be sending this presentation to them to just sort of disperse to their mailing list. But yes, if you sit in on another RPC, maybe one this week even, you'll probably hear this again.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other virtual questions? Not seeing anyone, I'll close discussion on this. Ricky, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you so much for the time. And again, please feel free to email me any questions, and I'll send this out so that people can access these links. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ricky, if you could stop sharing, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the MPO meeting?
Yes. Small, and I know you're all anticipating this. I will zoom in on my phone. So let's see. Can I do it? Yeah, here we go. Okay, an announcement. Excitement announcement. I made sure Nate put this in front of me, and I said, okay, I will remember this. So I'm remembering it. So public informational meeting. This is an announcement from New Hampshire DOT. This is for the Derry-Londonderry I-93 exit 4A project. It's an informational meeting. The date is August 4th. There's an open house from 6 to 7, presentations at 7, if you want to know exactly where it's located, so you can be there.
Western Runningbrook.
Thank you. West Runningbrook Middle School, the gymnasium specifically, and the address is 1 West Runningbrook Lane in Derry, New Hampshire. And they're inviting residents, business owners, commuters, local and elected officials, anyone with an interest. So there you have it. I've done my my job. I get a nod from Nate. That's always good. Okay,
You
thank
did
you.
okay, Nate?
She did fine.
Okay. Could I have a motion to adjourn the MPO, please? Is there a second? All those in favor? Virtually, okay. Thank you. I'll call to order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission meeting. Again, as we did with the MPO, I will call for a motion to accept the minutes of June 28th. Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections or omissions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
it's just a tiny little item with Barbara Griffin and Peter Griffin. We need to make sure the minutes are clear as to who's
speaking.
And I think they do a pretty good job, but I think consistency could be a little bit better.
Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, Sylvia, do you want to go ahead with the roll call and the request for approval?
I do, and I have noted a few additional arrivals, so stay tuned for those. Okay, in Bedford, we have Charlie Fairman,
Aye, and yes.
Bill Jean.
President, yes.
From Candia, we have Rudy Cartier.
Present, abstain.
From Derry, Jeff Moulton,
Here and yes.
John O'Connor,
Present, abstain.
Richard Tripp.
Present, yes.
From Francistown, Alfred Eisenberg.
Yes, and here, or here,
Okay,
yes.
great. Jennifer Badney.
Present, abstain.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Gary Schnackenberg.
Present, yes.
From Goffstown, we have David Pierce
Here, yes.
and Jacob LaFontaine.
Here and yes.
From Hooksett, we have Denise Pitchett Folk.
Here, yes.
Thank you. And Rob Curry.
Here and yes.
From Londonderry, Brian Battaglia
Present, yes.
and Arthur Rugg
I am here and yes on the minutes.
and Lynn Wiles.
I am here and yes on the minutes.
Great. From Manchester, we have Peter Capano,
Present and yes.
Ray Clement,
Here and yes.
Marcus Ponce de Leon,
Here and yes.
Don Waldron.
Here and yes.
From New Boston, we have Mark Sunan.
Here and yes.
Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin
Yes and yes.
and Edgar Lapointe.
Yes, here and yes.
Did I miss anyone on the commission?
Okay,
Okay,
great, thank you. First item on the agenda is a discussion by Sylvia on Manchester Solar Array.
actually, who's with us today, and Chaz, I've already made you a co-host if you want to start setting up your presentation. So a few months ago, I believe it was Ray who asked, can we get a tour of Manchester Solar Array? So I got on that, and so that's why you see Chaz Newton here today. Chaz is the Solid Waste and Environmental Programs Manager with the Department of Public Works in the city. He's been in the position for 1.5 years, and part of his job is to oversee activities, permitting, and any necessary monitoring of the landfill. He also oversees operations and overall programs for trash and recycling, as well as city-owned drop-off facilities. So Chaz, you want to take this away? And as Chaz is setting up also, note, this also, this is the first of a two-part excitement here. The second part is our actual tour, and that's on Thursday. And I believe, Chaz, that's at 9 o'clock, right?
That is at 9 a.m. Yes. Yep.
And so we want to meet at the site at 8:45. If anyone wants to meet here first to carpool, or you can meet at the gate. It's right opposite, didn't you say the animal shelter, Chaz?
That is correct. Yes. So it is right at the entrance of the animal shelter is another gate to the landfill. My plan was to kind of have everybody meet right inside the gate there, and then we can all, whoever can carpool after that up to the top of the landfill. And then we'll go check out the array.
Yeah, so if the commissioners are interested, then we'll see you also on Thursday, but take it away, Chaz.
This is the 4th.
This is this Thursday,
28.
the 28th. At 9, and we want to meet at 8:45, between 8:45 and 9 o'clock.
Yeah, Sylvia, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everybody for having me today. I'm really excited to share the solar project and all the hard work that everybody put into it. It was a long process for those involved in the whole thing. As you heard Sylvia say, I've only been part of or with the city of Manchester for 1.5 years. This is almost a 3-year project, so I didn't see the whole thing. Pretty much saw the development and the construction and whatnot, but nevertheless, very, very thankful to be a part of it. So as Sylvia mentioned, and as you may or may not know, the landfill is located on Dunbarton Road in Manchester. The landfill closed in 1996 and was capped just after the year 2000. So for a long time, this was real estate that had that was not being used for anything. There was multiple conversations about in the past about how to utilize this space. Nothing really came into fruition. I know some may had mentioned that or thrown out the idea to use it for like ball fields and whatnot. I think Goffstown did something similar, but ultimately nothing was done for over 20 years. So I'm going to give a little bit of a timeline today, and also kind of, what our process was here with the city of Manchester. So a couple of the contractors, pretty much, these are the two that the bulk of the work that was completed on our end. We contracted with Kearsarge Energy. Our main point of contact there was Everett Tadelbaum, the Vice President of Development with Kearsarge. He's the developer, owner, and operator for the Dunbarton Road landfill project. They have developed, Kearsarge Energy has developed more than $400 million of solar plus storage projects, including 36 megawatts of operating projects on landfills and brownfields. They do their work with schools, universities, state agencies, municipalities, so a wide array of projects there on their end. And then another point of contact, another contractor that we utilize is Competitive Energy Services. Our main point of contact there is Zach Halleck. He's the Energy Services Advisor, and he's the consultant to the city of Manchester. So a couple of great resources there who have been very helpful along this process. So the timeline for the RFP is as follows. In summer, as I mentioned, this was almost a 3-year project, pretty much 3 years, actually a little bit over in total. So in summer 2018, Manchester participated in a CES run RFI led by the city of Boston. In August of 2018, request for qualifications released for the on-site project. We had 28 respondents and 20 were deemed qualified. From January to March of 2019, request for proposals issued for on-site projects at 7 locations, and those are seen below there. They may be difficult to see depending on what screen you're looking at, so I'm going to list a few. So the capped landfill, obviously, that's where we ended up going. The vehicle storage unit for the Department of Public Works, which is that would have been on a rooftop. So that's located right next to Public Works. The actual Public Works complex, that would have been carport and rooftop. Manchester School of Technology would have been rooftop. Memorial High School would have been rooftop. And the Central Fire Station also would have been rooftop. So that's just a couple. We did a site walk with city officials, and then 11 respondents with over 350 pricing iterations. Ownership options, terms, and payment structures were all included. From April to May of 2019, we completed a review of all the proposals and reviewed findings with city stakeholders. In summer 2019, interviewed selected finalists and closely monitored relevant policy developments, which I'll dive into a little bit further in a little bit. In September of 2019, we requested the best and final pricing from finalists selected based on final site selection and policy outcomes, because obviously pricings vary depending on location. So with Kearsarge, that was mainly, we pretty much did all this with Zach Halleck and Competitive Energy Services here as the consultant. That was that portion. And then we transitioned and signed a contract with Kearsarge Energy. So in 2020, Eversource interconnection study and failed attempt for New Hampshire legislator to expand the net metering program. I believe before it was expanded, it was approximately 1.5 kilowatts per hour. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it was. And then in fall 2020, spring 2021, they completed design and started the permitting two-phase project, assuming no net metering expansion at the time. And then in April in 2021, the lease and net metering credit sales agreement was signed. In summer 2021, the net metering bill actually did pass. Permitting and procurement was completed. And then in September of 2021, we began construction out on the landfill. So that includes, the ballasts, obviously the solar panels itself. It was a long process even for that, but credit to all the contractors involved there. We had a deadline date that we needed to meet, which was December 31st, 2021. And it was kind of a slow process leading up to when construction began. And then because the net metering bill passed, so then we kind of changed a few things there to allow for higher energy. So that was we could then completed the construction in December 2021, and the panels were then able to produce energy. So some of the key benefits to the city at no cost to the city, more than $20,000 to $25,000 per year for 20 years, totaling an estimated $500,000 plus across energy savings and tax payments, up from $8,000 to $10,000 per year with the original smaller size that I talked about. So obviously drastic change there. Significant green energy benefits powering approximately 500 average homes annual usage. And then offset, so 2,700 metric tons of CO2 equivalent to burning of 3 million pounds of coal annually. Here are a couple of other equivalency results from the project. So greenhouse gas emissions equivalent to 6,768,025 miles driven by an average passenger vehicle. This is annually, by the way. This is not during the lifetime of the project. CO2 emissions equivalent to 303,026 gallons of gasoline consumed, and 35.7 tanker trucks worth of gasoline annually. And then greenhouse gas emissions avoided annually is 916 tons of waste recycled instead of landfilled, which is ironic because we're on a landfill. And then 114,585 trash bags of waste recycled instead of landfilled. So here's a little bit of a layout of the project itself. If you've ever seen the landfill, you know that it's definitely sloped. So we were pretty limited on where we could place the solar array. We could only do it at the very top. We covered 12 acres of the approximate 85 that the landfill covers. And again, 3.3 megawatts of direct current and 2.5 megawatts of alternating current array. With anything, there's an input and an output. So with direct current only flows in one direction, and alternating current changes direction periodically. Again, always an input and output. So that's where we get those numbers. The solar array does not penetrate the landfill cap, and all monitoring of the landfill and infrastructure remain the same. Approximately 12 acres of solar out of total area of 85 acres. If you've ever been up, well, if whoever does plan to join on Thursday, you'll see also it was a great view of the of Manchester from up on the top of the landfill. We'll still be able to see some of it, but now it's kind of blocked by the solar array. But really excited to come to show off the landfill there, and then 8,000 plus modules of solar panels up there. And with this project, there was approximately 15 IBEW local 490 electrician jobs, which was equal to approximately 10,000 labor hours that we were able to get out there, which was great. So obviously all this is, Manchester was very excited to be one of the first, the first municipality in New Hampshire to incorporate a solar array of this size. So credit to all those involved. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen played a big factor at this time, obviously. The mayor and Kevin Shepard, the Director of Public Works, and Tim Clordy, also Deputy Director of Public Works, all had a large hand to play in this. And then with that, I mentioned on here on the bottom of this slide, we have the Thursday tour at 9 a.m. At the Manchester landfill. So I will also have Zach Halleck in attendance there, who is the consultant from Competitive Energy Services, to answer additional questions. And then I'm unsure of any representatives from Kearsarge Energy, but I know they will try and be there as well to answer any additional questions. So.
Okay, for those of you asking questions, I should have made this point with our first speaker. If you please provide your name and the town that you represent. So is there a question such as in-house? Yes, go.
Richard Tripp, Dairy.
Okay.
Is this for commissioners only, or can other people attend the tour?
Do you have room, Chaz, for some other guests besides commissioners?
I do, yes. I will gladly give a tour to anybody that wants a tour of the landfill and solar project. Yep.
Okay, great. So it's open.
Okay, yes.
Ray Plum in Manchester. They used to take methane gas out of that landfill also. Are they still doing that?
So there's very little being produced at this point. Pretty much the bulk of it has already been extracted, so to speak. So we do have the flare across the street that's still present and does go off periodically, but it's really, the landfill is generating nearly nothing of methane at this point.
Go right ahead, Chris.
Hi, Jeff Moulton Dairy. We're doing a similar project, and we're kind of in the middle of engineering and planning right now.
Where are you from, Jeff?
What's that?
Where are you from?
I'm sorry, Dairy. And the part where we're running into some time frame delays is with the Eversource interconnect. Right now, we don't know what it's going to cost to upgrade the infrastructure, how long it's going to take, and timelines. Can you share any experience you had with Eversource on that whole infrastructure upgrade for the interconnect?
So yeah, the great question. So I personally don't have any experience with Eversource. I don't know if that took place before I came on board, or if that was part of one of the contractors and their whole process. But Jeff, I can definitely find out for you and see exactly what our experience was with Eversource prior to me coming on board. If you don't mind shooting me an email at that email right there, it's cnewton@manchesternh.gov. I am on paternity leave right now, so I'll get to it as soon as I get back into the office. But I'm happy to look into that for you.
One follow-up. Do you know if you did a lease or a PPA or arrangement with Kearsarge?
Yeah, we did, I believe it's a lease technically. So it's a 20 years. And then after the 20 years, we have the ability to either take it down. Well, we have the ability to take it down if we want, depending on how much it's generating at that point. Solar arrays, they don't generate as much power over time. So depending on its worth, Kearsarge also has the ability to remove it at that point.
All right, thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Chaz. It's Peter Capano from Manchester.
Hi, Peter.
I just wanted to follow up on Ray's comment about the methane and for the commissioners here to know that the city did lease the rights to the methane over a couple of decades, and it was incinerated and converted to energy prior to it dropping off to the point where it wasn't cost effective anymore. And that was what, 10, 15 years ago maybe, but this is sort of the next generation and a great project. So congratulations on it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, everybody involved with this project that had been involved for 2-3 years, they put in a lot of hard work. And I know the mayor and Department of Public Works and the board of mayor and aldermen were very pleased to actually get this solar project up on top of the landfill.
Additional questions in-house? Any questions from those calling in? I guess not. Chaz, my name is Peter Griffin. I live in Windham. I'm chairman of Southern New Hampshire Planning. There was an interesting program on 60 Minutes, I think. It was a profile of one of the islands in the Bahamas that was ravaged by a hurricane. Their whole infrastructure was destroyed, and they're essentially replacing it with solar panels. And they found it's less expensive to maintain and easier to maintain. So those of you might want to look it up and search for it. The other thing too, Chaz, have you had any discussions? I know this is pertaining to landfill, but those in the towns that have schools that may want to investigate solar panels on current construction or future construction?
I'm sorry, what's your question?
The question is, have you had any inquiries from communities that may not have landfill, but do have school structures that they may want to explore installation of solar panels?
Okay, yes, the answer is yes. I personally haven't, but again, Tim Clordy, deputy director, he kind of spearheaded this whole project from start to finish. So I know he's received questions from other municipalities and other school districts about solar projects, especially with the size of ours. I think that really took notice from a lot of people around the state, and so he's been fielding the bulk of those questions.
Okay. Yeah. Any further questions from anyone? I guess not. Chaz, thank you so much for making the presentation. I'm sure the tour is going to be really enjoyable and informative.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the tour. Thank you so much for having me. I do also want to just say one more thing. Kevin Shepard, for any of you that do know him, did announce his retirement. So there is a formal celebration. If you did ever encounter Kevin, great guy, very hard worker, and very knowledgeable. The formal celebration is being held at the Dairyfield restaurant on July 28th, same day as the tour actually, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Again at the Dairyfield restaurant, and that comes with cash bar and $20 suggested donation upon arrival. So appreciate anybody that can come out and support Mr. Shepard.
And Chaz, happy fatherhood.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Next item on the agenda is EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant. Sylvia, and that will be presented by Cam Prolman.
Yes,
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me
you
see.
can share your screen, Cam.
Yep. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I am going to be talking about our newly awarded EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant. We are very excited about this. We had applied the past 2 rounds for this competitive grant, and we were unsuccessful, but I guess 3 times is a charm. And so now we are, I can't move this. Can you guys see the second slide? Okay, thanks. Okay, so just some, I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can, and please stop me if anyone has any questions. So quickly, what is a brownfield? Brownfield is real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. And pictured here is in former brownfield, the Elliott River's Edge in Manchester. So the Brownfields program has many benefits. Some of the benefits to owners and developers include federal funding for environmental assessments. It identifies recognized environmental conditions, reduces uncertainty of cleanup costs while accessing economic incentives such as loans, grants, and/or tax reliefs. It can reduce liability and risk through phase 1 environmental site assessments. It can facilitate property transfers and help leverage funding for environmental cleanup. So some background, as I mentioned, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission was recently awarded a $500,000 US EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant for an anticipated performance period of 60 months, beginning in October of 2022. So at this point in the process, we were awarded the funds. We're working with various stakeholders and EPA to finalize our pre-award cooperative agreements. So the work hasn't officially begun yet, but we're getting the gears turning. So the grant award places a focus on applications which address equity and environmental justice. For those who are somewhat knowledgeable about the Brownfields program, the focus can change depending on the administration at the time, and this time it was equity and environmental justice. So our winning application placed an emphasis on addressing the needs within lower income and minority census tracts within the region. And as a result, portions of Manchester and Derry were identified as high priority areas. That said, the grant does support assessments of identified brownfield sites in every community in the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission region. Oops. So the process, I'm sorry. I may have double slides here. So excuse me. So one of the important parts of our program is that we will have a Brownfields Advisory Committee, and they will provide local knowledge and guidance. They will allocate the awarded grant funds with support from SNHPC staff and the qualified environmental professional, otherwise known as a QEP. So the advisory committee will consist of representatives from SNHPC municipalities, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, US EPA, the Capital Regional Development Council, and the Regional Economic Development Center of Southern New Hampshire. SNHPC will work with the QEP, the advisory committee, and property owners to conduct outreach to the public. We will inventory brownfield sites. We will conduct phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessments, develop cleanup action plans, and create comprehensive redevelopment plans for a few select sites that will be vetted with the public. So I'm just going to briefly kind of go through how the process works for, we're just going to say like one brownfield site. So the first step in the process to utilize these funds as like a property owner is the site nomination. So sites are nominated, they're nominated by completing a short form, returning it to SNHPC. SNHPC staff and the advisory committee reviews and then selects the nomination on a rolling basis. Here pictured is another example of a former brownfield site in Manchester. This is Giorgio's restaurant. It's on the corner of Granite and 2nd Street. So after nomination, we go into the phase 1 environmental site assessments, which are preliminary environmental assessments to aid in the identification of potential or existing environmental contamination. Excuse me. So within a phase 1 ESA is a search of historical and environmental records for the property in the surrounding area, site visits, interviews with past and present owners and operators and occupants of the property, local government officials, and other knowledgeable parties. So once a phase 1 is completed and accepted by EPA, we move on to the phase 2 ESA, which builds on the findings of the phase 1 by sampling and analyzing potentially impacted media on the site. So the collection of soil, air, groundwater, and or building material samples. And the goal is to determine the presence, type, and distribution of petroleum and hazardous substances on the property. After phase 1 and 2 ESAs have been completed, we then move on to an analysis of brownfields cleanup alternatives and remedial action plans. So if the contamination is identified, the ABCA/RAP can be prepared to evaluate remedial measures to facilitate redevelopment. And this includes assessing options for cleanup, estimating the cost of cleanup, identifying institutional controls like deed restrictions, and then integrating cleanup objectives with site redevelopment plans. Once remedial measures have been selected, it is ultimately up to the developer to implement remedial measures and to redevelop the property. Our assessment grant funds are not available for remedial or redevelopment costs. However, other funding mechanisms are out there, and it, part of our role here is to help kind of facilitate, point in the right direction, connect folks together. So, as I said, we're at the very beginning stage of this, and our next steps are to work with EPA and stakeholders to develop and post a request for proposals for a QEP, as well as conduct initial public outreach. We will organize and facilitate an advisory committee meeting, and we will ultimately interview and then select one QEP with the advisory committee. And that's all I had today. That was a lot in a pretty short amount of time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, say it again.
Please go right ahead.
Okay, Marcus from Manchester. I was curious if you're able to share any of the sites that are being considered so far.
Yes, well, so we identified 2 sites in our grant narrative. One of them, the Manchester site, is the property right behind the Elliott at River's Edge. In past conversations that we've had with the city, it is believed that there's potential for a brownfield site there. And at one point, I believe the city was interested in developing it into a park. preferences can change, and but that's one of the sites we're looking at. The other one in Derry is a site that is located very close to a Superfund site. It is not the Superfund site. Brownfields assessment grants cannot be used on a Superfund site, but I can, if you'd like, maybe we can connect after this, or I could shoot you an email, and I can share the specific locations of the sites.
Okay. Yes, anyone calling in that wishes to ask Cam a question? Not seeing anyone. Cam, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Regional Housing Needs Assessment Survey results, presented by Tammy Zamoyski, Regional Planner.
Let me just move some windows around here.
Cam, I don't know, while Tammy's getting ready, there's some talk in the room about where the Superfund site is. While Tammy's getting ready, can you maybe locate on a map or something the location you're talking about? We can come back to you.
Yes. Give me 1 second.
You have more than 1 second. You have the length of Tammy's.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen, just so I know?
We have the audience window in front of the, there you go.
Thank you. You can just let me know when you guys are ready.
We are completely ready. We're waiting on you.
Okay. My name is Tammy Zamoyski. I'm a regional planner here at the Planning Commission, and today I'm going to present to you a summary of the general public survey results for the Regional Housing Needs Assessment for the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. So if you're not familiar with this update, this is a statewide effort including all 9 of the RPCs plus the Office of Regional Planning and Development and the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. So as part of our outreach effort, we distributed a 29-question general public outreach survey in both English and Spanish, and we received 451 results. So we used a number of outreach methods to distribute the survey. The majority, can you see my second slide here?
No, it didn't move.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, sorry, I have a lot of windows open. I'm also doing the timestamps and some other things. So we used a number of different outreach methods to distribute the survey. The majority, 59%, came straight from our GIS story map, which is our project webpage that we created. 20% came from social media, 19% came from the press release, and 2% were a result of the outreach that our equity stakeholders did. So those are mostly nonprofits that work with people of color, limited English proficiency, low income, and unhoused populations. Through our outreach efforts, we were able to get representation from each of our 14 communities. As you can see on the left here, Manchester has the highest percentage of responses, and that's because we have the largest population. So to account for all of this, we looked at all the survey responses, but then we also filter the responses by the town size. So we use the same breakout as we did in our focus group meetings, so we can compare the public perception to what we heard from the planners and the other town representatives. So we looked at just Manchester alone. We looked at medium-sized towns, which we determined were Bedford, Derry, Goffstown, Hooksett, Londonderry, and Windham. And small towns being Auburn, Candia, Chester, Deerfield, Francistown, New Boston, and Ware. So we were also able to receive feedback from every age group, as you can see here. And the most highly represented group was older adults, which was around 23%. All incomes were represented as well, with the most responses coming from those with the approximate annual household income of 45,000 to 89,000. And just for reference, the average household income in our region is $105,000. And I did want to point out that there's a lot of variation across all of our municipalities. So the median household income ranges from 62,000 in Manchester up to 154,000 in Windham. So this is a really fun slide. I'm going to try to simplify it as best I can. So the question asked participants to indicate your level of priority of the following characteristics when choosing a neighborhood to live in. So the very high priorities were in my price range and area safety. High priorities included close to family and friends, close to work, close to amenities, the size of the unit, the infrastructure and utilities, the land suitability, the land amenities, the presence of established villages, downtown centers, and events, and proximity to outdoor recreation. Close to public transit was rated as very low, as well as located where near I grew up. And then there was one that people said was not applicable to them, and that was school system. So in case you're wondering, some of the other priorities listed were specific housing types, different people or neighbors that people wanted to live near, accessibility, being pet friendly, emergency services that were available, property taxes, location, quality, and someone even said warm weather was important to them. So this next question says, when thinking about housing in your community, please indicate the level of agreement with the need for additional units for each stated housing type. So I did some math here. 82% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that more moderate income housing is needed. So you can see that here in the second line. I just combined the strongly agreed and the agreed. 64% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that more low-income housing units were needed. 63% agreed or strongly agreed that more rental housing is needed. 62% agreed or strongly agreed that more senior housing is needed. And 62% of respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed that additional high-end housing units are needed. So now I'll give you a short break from all of these crazy tables. This is an open-ended question that asked, what desires or goals do you have for housing in the future? So each of the 451 responses were categorized by theme, and then I pulled out these as the top goals. So here are the top 5. 21% said small or downsize. 13% said affordable or efficient. 9% said bigger or land. 9% said home ownership, and 8% said unknown or they didn't have any goals. Some of the other responses were to stay, just being able to have a choice or more choices, retire or migrate, senior housing, walkable or amenities, home improvements, safety, independence, services, and a second or vacation home. So this question asks, please select the statement that best describes your overall housing costs, and that includes mortgage or rent, utilities, insurance, property taxes, and maintenance. So as you can see here, about 45% of respondents said their costs were less than 30% of their household's income, which is considered to be healthy. Almost 36% said their costs were between 30 and 50%, and 12% were greater than 50%. So this means that nearly half of all of our respondents, or 48%, are considered housing burdened, meaning that they are spending more than 30% of their household income on overall housing costs. So I also looked at respondents for Manchester alone, and that number slightly increased to 50%. In medium-sized towns, it was about 48%, and in small towns, it's slightly lower at 44%. So that means that this is a regional issue that is not tied to any specific community. And then we also looked at young adults, which for this survey, we were saying anybody under the age of 34 living in the region. And they said that 46% were spending 30% or more of their household income on housing. So I did pull 2 questions from our employer survey to share with you as well. So this one says, do you believe that a housing supply shortage impacts your ability to attract or keep workers? So we had just over 60% said yes, and just under 40% said no. This question says, to what extent do you think the following factors impact your ability to attract or keep qualified workers? So the factors that they thought had a high impact included availability of housing, cost of housing, and quality of housing. They said that proximity of housing to workplace has low impact, and that proximity of housing to public transportation and proximity of housing to amenities had no impact. So I wanted to share this with you because when we compare these to the responses that we received from the general public survey, both groups did agree that proximity to public transit was a very low priority. However, the proximity to work and amenities were both high priorities, with 38% and 37% of the general public saying that those were high priorities. So now we'll jump back to the general public survey. This one asks priorities prioritize the housing related challenges facing your community. So please rank the greatest challenge as 1 and the lowest challenge as 8. So the highest priority challenges were cost of housing or rent and availability of housing options. And then the mid-range priorities were cost of repair, maintenance, or ADA accessible needs, and neighborhood safety. And then we had quite a few challenges that people thought did not apply to their community. And those included flooding, homelessness, housing discrimination, and presence of unkempt or vacant properties and homes. So these top priorities remain consistent among every size community, with the exception of Manchester, who identified availability of housing options as a second-tier priority. And then I also wanted to talk about a separate survey. This was one that was just for social service workers, and approximately 78% of social service workers surveyed reported that demand for housing units greatly exceeded supply, and approximately 74% said that the number of individuals or families facing housing challenges has increased over time. It was reported that the people who have the hardest time finding and keeping housing in our area include people who receive assistance such as vouchers, have poor credit, eviction history, or domestic violence history. So in contrast, most of the respondents to the general public survey, as you can see here, 26% stated that housing discrimination is a challenge that does not apply to my community. Homelessness was also an important topic at the Manchester Municipal Focus Group meeting, as well as with the Manchester Housing Commission.
Tammy?
So, yes.
We're stuck on question 8. We haven't seen any change in when you started talking about the social worker survey.
Oh, yes, this is the same slide.
Okay, because you said something about you can see. And
you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but it says 26% of the general public does not believe that the housing discrimination is a challenge that applies to my community.
Right.
That's just what I was referring to.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry for any confusion. No, this is a lot of information to cover. So I actually just have one more slide here. So this question asks, have you or your family ever been at risk of eviction or losing your home? Just over 80% said no, and just under 20% said yes. 36% of people who said yes said it was because it was either too expensive or they were experiencing a price increase. Another 36% said that it was because of life events, such as getting laid off or a change in family dynamics, such as a divorce or a death in the family. 18% of people referenced getting kicked out as a result of an ownership change or some landlord issues. 7% of people said it was because of health reasons, such as mental health or cancer, and 3% said it was a failure to pay taxes. So I just wanted to also point out that in Manchester alone, this number was over a quarter of all respondents at 27%. So I know that was a lot of information. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.
In the house, please go ahead.
What was the survey size for the, it was what, 452 for the residents, but what was it for businesses?
I do not know that number off the top of my head. We did send it out to every business that was on the business in good standing or BIGS list. We did get a lot of responses. I can look that up and get back to you guys if you'd like.
It was approximately
80, thank you.
Dave, you can go ahead.
Tammy, Dave Pierce, Gulfstown. Do you know that the State Office of Planning and Development, are they planning any next step now that they've received the results of all the regional planning commissions?
Yes, James, are you in the room?
I am.
I was wondering if you might talk about the next steps for this survey outreach on the state level.
Yeah, so the data from each RPC is available to the Office of Planning and Development. It's not clear whether they're gonna have the capacity to combine this data into a statewide analysis, but the data does exist for them to do that. And we collected it in a way that was consistent across RPCs so that that data could be aggregated together into something that would constitute a statistical analysis. There's enough sampling across the state that we could have an accurate reading of conditions across the state.
Okay, you had a question.
Richard Tripp, Dairy. Tammy, is this presentation and the results of the survey going to be shared with the commissioners?
Yes, once we finish finalizing all of our results, I still have a lot of formatting. This document is over 200 pages currently. Once that is all ready, we will be putting all of the results, including all of the open-ended questions, in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment document, and that will be available to everybody.
Additional questions in house? Additional questions from those calling in?
I have one quick one, if I can, Tammy. Gary Schnackenberg from Francistown. And I just missed what you had said at the start. You had about 451 responses. And what was the total number? What was your total number of surveys sent out? I'm just, my question, just from my own curiosity, is your return or response rate.
So we didn't actually send out any surveys.
Oh, okay,
We
okay,
did
right.
a press release that actually went out statewide, and then people were kind of filtered by region, so they knew which survey to take.
Right, so they had to take the step and go on a link to something and answer the question.
Yes,
Yep,
yeah,
okay.
nothing was mailed out. We did a lot of outreach on social media. We did outreach within each community, working with the different nonprofits and everything, so.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess that's it. Tammy, thank you so much. This is Peter Griffin from Windham.
Okay, thank you.
We look forward to the completed report. Any other business? Sylvia?
Yes, Linda is reminding.
Linda, you're on.
A date has been selected. for our
The
in-person
annual meeting, yes, the annual meeting will be, drum roll. Thank you, Peter. Will be Monday, September 12th. And James in our office. And if you haven't heard, James has taken a position. He's going to start building housing. And so we're going to say goodbye to James in a couple of weeks. We are crying as we wave goodbye to James. He's been just such an amazing, just an amazing planner for us and has done so much. But anyway, James has arranged, you may recall, I think it might have been for the executive committee, and now I'll get off you, James. I know that's probably not your favorite thing ever. James is helping to arrange the speaker for the annual meeting. Here, I'll put myself in the spotlight, just so I know how it feels. But as you may recall, at least the executive committee, because I forget, I think it was the executive committee, you presented on the Manchester Build Back Better grant proposal. And so the speaker we're focusing in, I believe, right, James, on the aviation industry portion of that Build Back Better grant. It's really state-of-the-art work. So he's arranging a panel from that group focused on, I believe, a firm in Vermont that is
Data technologies, and they're growing quite rapidly. In fact, just this week, they announced that they're going to be expanding their, I don't know, I got to walk through the facility. It's probably a 20,000 square foot facility. They just signed that exists on the Burlington, Vermont airport. They just signed a contract, a 75-year lease contract with Burlington, and they're expanding that facility to 340,000 square feet. So they're ramping up for scale production of electric vertical takeoff and landing flying devices. Basically, they're not an airplane, they're not a helicopter, there's something in between. And it's very futuristic. It's a very compelling financial model they have, and I think we're probably going to see a pretty rapid adoption of these things over the next decade.
So that's what our annual meeting presenters will focus on, is the aviation portion of the Build Back Better grant. So again, that's Monday, September, Linda, 12th, September 12th.
And it'll be a dinner.
It'll be a dinner, so I believe,
The dairy field.
Okay.
yeah, somewhere 5, 6, do we know yet?
I think we booked 5 to 7, but that might include our setup time.
All right, yeah, that might include setup time, so,
More details forthcoming.
yes, thank you, Linda.
Any additional other business? Any public comments? Commissioner insights?
Oh, we did ask Cam to show us that where the.
Oh, yes, the map, Cam, of the Brownfield site.
Yes, let me,
Just because there was a little confusion about where that was, and
yeah, so let me share my screen. The site that we had kind of built our narrative around in Derry is the Whispering Pine site. It is a manufactured home community. I believe it has around like 270 homes here. And it is
there is the Superfund site.
right.
That's- Can you just
This
point your
area.
arrow?
Yep. And so
Landscaping.
they it's tricky to use. Like I said, assessment funds cannot be used on a Superfund site. They're completely different beasts. But we are going to work with the town of Derry. We're going to work with EPA and a qualified environmental professional to see what we can do, whether maybe it's just outreach and education. But so that was one of the sites we picked, but anything can happen in this pretty long time frame we have for this grant. So excuse me, we look forward to working with folks in Derry, and yeah, so
just to be clear, Cam, the site, the Superfund site is I can't point at it. You can only point at
it's
it.
the Auburn Road landfill.
All right, but
This area.
but the Pines, Whispering Pines. So the site itself was adjacent to the Whispering Pines, wasn't it?
No, Whispering Pines is the brownfields, the potential brownfield site that we discussed in our narrative.
And that was to expand housing for that site, or?
could be whatever, the community is interested in. It could be expanding sewer and water. It could be, redevelopment. It's not up to us. It's up to property owners. It's up to, the vision that the town has. And so that stuff will come in time when we do our public outreach, when we are vetting these areas.
All right, well, the three folks from DERA are here. Cam is here. If you have any questions, please just ask Cam. He's right around the corner.
Yeah, I'll come right up.
All right.
Okay, any other questions, comments, insights? People calling in? No. People in the room? No. Motion to adjourn, please.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Second?
Second.
All right,
All
thumbs
those
up
in
all
favor?
around.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.